A car battery has a positive and a negative terminal. They're connected to the car and send a flow of electrons to power the wipers, headlights, radio, air conditioning, and most importantly, the engine starter. Inside the battery are 6 small energy-producing units called cells. Each cell has 2 sets of electrodes. They're made of 8 overlapping metallic plates, for a total of 16 per cell. Together, the plates form a compact grid. The bigger the grid's overall surface, the more power it generates. The positive grid, covered in lead oxide, carries electrons in. The negative grid, covered in lead, releases electrons. The plates soak in a chemical bath, 65% water, 35% sulfuric acid. Volatile stuff. If you're not careful, a drop of it will eat through your clothes and burn off your skin. But the key to the car battery is all those powerful chemicals reacting with each other inside the cells. Reactions repeated as the battery drains. The bath of water and sulfuric acid acts as an electrolyte, a substance that conducts electricity. As the battery discharges or unloads electricity, the acid bath reacts to the chemicals on the plates. The lead covering one cell grid and the lead oxide covering the other. Dipping them in the electrolyte bath releases particles called electrons. When they start racing in the grids, they create electricity. As the electrons race from the positive grid in the first cell and out the negative grid, they produce 2 volts of electricity. The lead and lead oxide covering the electrodes have been chemically transformed. And when the electrons from the first cell zoom into the second cell, they pick up another 2 volts, for a total voltage of 4. By the time the electrons charge out of the 6th cell, they have a combined voltage of 12. That's a fully loaded car battery with enough juice to power the starter and crank the engine. Once you've squeezed out all the juice to start the motor, the fuel system takes over and keeps the motor running. The car's alternator takes over the rest of the electrical chores. Time for the battery to juice itself back up. It recharges by reversing the chemical reactions. Electrons coming from the car's alternator now enter the battery through the negative grid of the cells and come out the positive side. The chemicals on the grids go back to normal, and the battery is recharged and ready to put out another 12 volts of electricity. That is, unless you happen to leave the car lights on overnight. In that case, the chemical reactions move in one direction, draining the battery, which never gets a chance to recharge itself. The inevitable result is a dead battery.
My job is to make.
Yes.
So how come you can't just keep, get new electrolyte and use the same cells? Like, do the cells themselves go bad?
Yeah, they do. They get covered with sulfate. Okay.
So it's the water that's inside of it that's really the conductor. What does this sulfuric acid do?
Well, it's electrolyte, so we'll
Oh,
talk
yeah.
about that.
Okay.
All right. So that was construction. I like that one because it covers the construction. We're going to do another one that has more of the chemical reaction. So we'll do construction. Construction. So one battery, the whole thing, one whole battery, consists of a group of cells, connected in series, and encased together. And encased together. So what you see is just one battery, but really it's 6 or 12 little batteries all put together in a lead acid, at least, to make one battery that you see. Each cell has a positive and negative plates. Each cell has positive and negative plates, and several of them within each cell, alternating with insulating material, between each of them, called separators. So that's, you have a battery right here. Kind of a salesy thing. I'm not even sure how far this comes apart. Look at that. So I think this is real lead. So you can see that you have a plate, and then inside of there is a piece of cardboard. That's the insulator. Then I've got another plate, then the insulator, then the plate.
Sorry.
You made your point. I was gonna say, he's got 2 inches left on that pencil. Tell us how you feel about that.
Okay. So, and of course, lead is actually very bad for you.
Yes.
Why? Because
Name of science.
In the name of
I'm ready to die. So when I'm writing that, I'm thinking about these plates and those separators. That's one of the things that can go bad in a battery is those separators. If that separator breaks down, or if we get enough heat built up in there where it breaks down, that's bad. And if the two plates touch each other, it shorts it out. And so it's not going to have the flow like we want it. So you start shorting out your plates and you start losing voltage. And that's one of the things that can go wrong in a battery. I feel like I shouldn't write this, but then sometimes if I don't write what I have on here, I come back around and go, oh, I should have actually wrote that. So I'll just write it. Well, that means that Robbie's he's only got 2 inches of pencil left, man. He's got to really, think about, is this worth writing? Robbie, you might want now to write this point, just,
only functional.
Wait, I thought you were joking. I think it's really that small.
Don't do this probably like that.
There you go.
Everybody give him a pencil.
I don't normally do that, but I don't know. Robbie and I have been around now for a little while, so I got to take care of my guy. All right, so positive plates. The positive plate is lead peroxide. Lead peroxide. And of course, this is just common knowledge. That is PbO2. There we go. But you knew that. And the negative plate.
Peroxide. That'd be dioxide.
Huh?
O2 is di.
Well, this is where I copied it.
Okay. That's, yeah. Okay.
Negative plate is pure spongy lead. Which is Pb. All right, back to what I need to know. Each, you don't want to write this part with your new pencil there. All right, each cell produces produces about 2.1 volts. That's OCV, meaning what? Open circuit. What'd you say? Open what? And 2.0 closed circuit voltage, CCV, when fully charged. When fully charged. All right. So obviously the cells, you have the cells and they're placed into a box. Like that. So cells are placed into a box or cell container. Cells are into a box or cell container. You cannot pull the cells out. Well, I mean, if you try hard enough, you can. Anything can come apart if you work at it hard enough. And the cell container, it is made of, they are made of, make that 0.1, made of hard plastic. No, that's not right. Not right in that. We'll just put hard plastic. It says hard plastic or metal. They're not metal. So they're usually made of hard plastic. While I'm thinking about it, there are a lot of things about batteries, too, that I can think of out the top of my head, of these, well, you can't say wives' tales. So what's a proper word for that? Nope. Wise tales?
Urban legend.
Urban legends. Yes, myths. Yeah. Daniel, do you have some?
I've seen metal.
Lead acid?
No.
Yeah, I was thinking that's more for NiCad. It's lead acid. They're hard plastic. So, okay. So 2 urban legends, if you will. One of it, and there's always a truth behind them. So one of them is, and it's funny. You have to know them because you have to know not to do it because people will get on you. Like one of them is never put a battery on a concrete floor.
Okay.
It will discharge itself.
What?
Yep. Of course you've heard it. I'm telling you right now, if I walk in any shop anywhere and I put a battery on the floor, somebody's going to come out and go, hey, you can't put that on the floor. Why not? Well, it's because you can't. It'll discharge itself. Well, there's truth to that. The compounds that they used to use in batteries would actually discharge through a floor. So there's some truth to that. These compounds are changed over the year. And to that, another story I can tell you is we'll talk about compounds. Tires, like for example, tires are made out of different compounds. I remember one time my wife and I had a car. We put new tires on it. And man, you couldn't get near that car. Every time you touched that car, it would shock the hell out of you. And so I actually realized after a period of time, my procedure for opening the door without even thinking about it is I would come, I'd lean up against the car and then put the key in. Somebody goes, why do you always do that? And I'm like, oh, I forgot, because it gets shocked every time. And sure enough, we drove somewhere and and then we bought new tires and didn't do it anymore. It's the compound in the tires actually didn't allow the energy to dissipate through the car, and so it did through me.
That's interesting.
It's on there. Just a little bit. Okay, so that's one of them. The other one, and I have to be careful with this because it is a Q&A question. Never, ever allow a lead acid battery to even see a NiCad. If the two of them even notice each other, they will spontaneously quit. It's game over. Hang a red tag on it. It's done. So it's still written, and the reason why is because lead acid is an acid, and what's the opposite of an acid is base. And so NiCads are base. If you mix the two together, you get neutral. So keep that in mind. If you're ever in a Flight of the Phoenix, you guys ever heard the book Flight of the Phoenix? Okay, so for those of you who haven't, I mention it a lot. It's a pretty good book. It's an old book. But it's about a group of people, must have been around World War II-ish time in the 40s, who crash in the Sahara Desert in Africa, and they have to rebuild the plane and fly out to get rescued. So I often reference a Flight of the Phoenix scenario, which is if you stay, you'll die. So you're going to build. So keep that in mind that if you get thirsty, all you need to do is mix your lead acid battery and your NiCad battery, and you should have plenty of water to drink. So not don't think so. Okay.
Maybe once.
You know what? He's got to get. You can do it one time and you'll. You won't be around. Okay, so I actually read an article not that long ago that said really you can have them in the same area and stuff. It's not that big of a deal. So, but I tell you that, but don't even bother going into a shop and telling them that I said that. So if you're working in a shop, just go, if I put it on the ground, somebody's going to say something. So put it on a block of wood, because somebody will say something, you have to explain yourself. And at the same time, if they've got a counter where they do their NiCads, don't bring your lead acid and set it next there. Just keep them separate. It's just easier to go with the flow. But if you know the truth, then it's...
Get an old guy, don't do that.
I know, yep, every time. Let me see.
I'm sure that's never happened.
Complacency.
Where am I?
It's never, although it's both the same thing.
Okay. What's that?
Oh, like charging batteries and stuff. It's like, yeah, don't leave it on the floor.
Yeah. Each frame has a grid. That contains the active material. Has a grid that contains the active material. The plates, they sit on a little shelf. Oh, I actually wrote that. Plates sit on a little shelf. Looks just like that little tiny table you get when you order pizza. No, it doesn't look like that. Let's see. Little shelf with space below. On a little shelf with space below. With space below. The purpose of this little space, so I'll put this space, prevents the plates from shorting out from debris. So what happens is, and I could show you some of the batteries that I'm getting ready to throw out. They are horrific. So if you look down here, you can see that there's actually space below here, down in there, and it's like, well, they don't go to the bottom. At least here they don't. Over here they do, for some unknown reason. But there's still a space down there. You just can't see it. But there's lots of space on these. And so as over time, these batteries get sulfation and stuff built on it, and that stuff will break off and fall down. And when it falls down, it'll short out the cells. So you have to have a space below it. And of course, when that space fills up, battery's bad. Okay. Oh, I just wrote that. Space below the plates allows for debris to accumulate without shorting the cells. Space prevents the plates from shorting out from debris. Good enough. All right. Except I should make that I, or you guys will be all off. I know, it's just the worst thing that ever happened right there. The top of each set of plates, the top of each set of plates will have a lug. To connect to the next cell. To connect to the next cell. And as we said the other day, which would have been yesterday, cells are connected together to create the proper voltage. together to create the proper voltage. So if I look at the top of a battery and I have 6 openings, how many cells do I have?
Six.
Therefore, it is a
12
12-volt battery. If it's a 24-volt battery, I have 12 holes. Unless it doesn't have any holes. Then how do you know what voltage it is? It's written on the side.
Kevin,
Yeah.
so I've noticed a lot of battery compartments aren't isolated. Like they're on their own, but they're not isolated. They're usually reaching into another section of the aircraft. Is there a reason why they don't totally isolate them, except for just wire holes?
You mean like its own little fireproof box container?
Basically, maybe not hermetically sealed, but you know.
Battery boxes, hold the battery, right? That's to keep it separate from everything else.
Yeah.
I don't understand without them.
So most aircraft have battery box.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen them hermetic or like just sealed off from the rest of the plane though.
No,
And
well,
from the story,
I don't know. You're asking me engineering questions. I wasn't there when they decided this, so
But I
no.
didn't know if you knew there's a specific reason or not.
No, I could come up with reasons, but I wasn't on the committee. Sorry. It's on a shelf. They're in the A&E bay
Yeah,
equipment.
but they leak, and don't they usually?
They don't leak.
Yesterday, one battery that he messed up, and it leaked into the bottom of the aircraft.
Who? What?
Your,
explode. Your
the
buddy
one that you forced
overfilled it.
open.
Oh, well,
I mean, that's a rare case. but
you do something stupid. I mean, if you're trying to prevent somebody from doing something stupid, well, then, I mean, we got all kinds of problems, you know? And why can the fuel nozzle fit in where the oil goes? Well, we shouldn't have that happen. You know, we just go on and on. So yeah.
It's actually got a box that's got a rubber seal on top. Put it down, you have these little like lid things that snap down.
Yeah.
And so it's hermetically sealed pretty good, except it's got an opening where ram air comes in.
Uh-huh.
And then a hose at the bottom that bleeds it out, and that air goes out to the tail of the plane.
There's-
I think it's to get all the fumes out.
Well, and I believe it's FAR Part 23. You have to have lead acid batteries positively vented.
Okay. And that's separate.
Or a drain. Yeah, ours is in the tail with the plastic box
Okay.
behind. But it's, all right, connect together, proper voltage. Oh, where'd I go with this? Well, this is kind of obvious. The top of the battery. Top of battery contains the positive and negative terminals. Sometimes, but not always. I'll put this. Yeah.
So none of the airplanes are gonna be like kind of the new car batteries. Some of the posts are on there on the side. They'll always be at the top.
The only ones I've ever seen are either on the top or a lot of them have quick disconnects. So they are on the side, but you have a receptacle that goes on and you twist to lock.
Yeah. Okay.
So battery may have vent caps. They're getting more rare, these vent caps. So vent caps allow, vent caps, let me see. Vent cap may have caps to allow oxygen and hydrogen to vent. I'm going to just make a note right here. I'm going to write it down later, but it's of one of those things that if you forget everything, there's some things you have to remember when you get out in the field. So you have the positive and negative terminals. You have to know which one to unhook first and which one to put on first. So, and I'm just going to put that right here, although it doesn't match with this point. So the positive stays on the longest. Somebody made that point. I'm like, hey, that's true. So the negative comes off first. And the negative goes on last. And there's a very, very good reason for this. So aircraft are always very tight and difficult to get into. So, you know, to get the battery out of my car, you just roll the seat forward and stand there and just undo it and pull it out. You know, in your car, you probably lift the hood and there it is, just undo it and you can pull it out. There's lots of access room. In aircraft, it's always, especially with lead acid, large aircraft, you just pull the whole NICAD out and usually have quick disconnects and it's easy. But mine, I'm in my baggage door, kind of hunkered down in the dark, bent sideways and working in the back. So you're trying to undo these things. So imagine, if you will, I decide that I want to undo the positive first. And so I've got the top right here, right? And right here is the edge of the aircraft. And so I put my wrench on and I move it over here. And so now I got my wrench going from the positive to my
Grounded frame.
to my nice aircraft right there. So what's going to happen is a couple things. One, it's going to get really light in there as it sparks all over the place. Number two, my wrench is going to get really freaking hot really quick, and I can't undo it because it's going to turn red hot. So now it's stuck there, and my paint starts bubbling on the outside. But that's okay, because it's only got to discharge a couple hundred amps until it starts cooling down. So you'll eventually be fine. So let's turn it around. And we'll say, I got the wall right here, and I've got my negative right here, and I go to undo this, and I accidentally touch my wrench to the negative. What's going to happen? Nothing, because it's already connected there. It's got a wire that's going basically from here, in all practical purposes, right to the airframe. It's only just right here to right there. That's all the further it is, and it's bolted right to the aircraft anyway, so my wrench touches it, and nothing happens, because it's already connected electrically anyway. So I take that off, and then I go the other side, and I go and I accidentally touch my wrench. What happens?
Nothing.
Nothing, because there's no path for electricity. Right? So then when I go to put it back on, put the positive on first, I can touch the wrench to the airplane all day, it doesn't matter. Then come over here. Now, these are pretty close together on most aircraft batteries. What happens if the wrench goes from the positive to the negative? Yeah, you got a welding project going on right there. And that's one of the reasons why when I work on airplanes, I don't wear jewelry of any kind. So, and you'll notice that even around here, my wedding ring is just an Amazon piece of rubber. You know, yeah, you can buy a whole pack of wedding rings for I think $5. About, you're like, huh?
Yeah. Tell my wife that.
Just wear an O-ring.
An O-ring, yeah.
Actually, if I didn't like if it wasn't for the color, a perfect size for me is Lycoming push rod seals. But they only come in green and orange that I can find. I prefer black. So you can find Lycoming push rod. And by the way, push rod seals are a lot more expensive. So, in fact, if these work for push rod seals, I think I got something going on there. Yeah, you get the slightest bit of oil in this. It's like 4 times the size. Like, whoa, okay. Where am I here? Goes on last. I wanted to throw that in there. Okay, I don't know, sometimes I get into too much stuff here, but it's here, what the heck. So the caps use conical weights, because people used to care about this. Conical caps. These caps that I was, huh?
Is it you?
See, what?
Conical, it's a U between the C and the L.
Oh my lord.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
CONICAL. Is that what you're going on? Okay.
No, it's C-U.
Is this where you want to go with this?
Stop writing.
I will stop writing. I've already put the pen down.
I didn't know.
Pause.
Hold on, he's got to adjust the thermostat again.
Oh, no.
I'm leaving. I'm going away.
Thanks, Hannah.
I'm driving with him. This is worse for me.
You did this to yourself.
You know that then you know this question.
I didn't know this was an A. It looks like a U up there.
He's still recording. So.
Yes, I guess. Don't ask.
He filled it.
He's gonna come back with a little ABC show. It's not good.
No, and we're still recording.
I have a lot of things in my office, and I don't always remember to bring them, and I can't find them because I moved. But it shows what this conical weight is, and I'll find it. And I think there's a picture in your book. But anyway, you have these vent caps, and inside of it, there's a weight that is shaped like a cone. And it's actually heavy lead weight. And then it has a little, thing that comes down here, like that. And so what happens is when the aircraft, and this is, you got little holes on top. When the aircraft is straight and level, the center of gravity is going down, it's fine, it's open. But as the aircraft, if it were to go inverted, this conical weight, or it gets to a certain angle, then this will rock to one side. And as it rocks, it pushes up on this little plate, and the plate seals up. Or if you go upside down, this conical weight, of course, will fall this way because it's upside down and seal it off so that the lead acid battery does not start draining itself inside of the aircraft.
Do those things ever become like stuck or damaged?
They're pretty heavy, actually. I'll find one. They're rather heavy. And so I've never seen them. But yeah, when I unscrew them, when I'm working on a battery and charging it, I always unscrew caps and just set them down. But you can kind of rattle them and shake them, make sure that they work. So use a conical weight. And I'm not going to it's at an angle to prevent spilling during maneuvers. Oh, look, figure 3-1 in Eisman. Maybe I have a picture. Negative. Made something mad. Never heard that before. Okay. There's one. I don't need to get to my computer. I have a vaccine. There's one. There is one vent per cell. I'm supposed to be a vaccine proponent. I'm sorry. I just joke because if the vents are plugged, what's going to happen?
Battery will blow up.
It's not going to, well, it's definitely going to bulge out. So they're plugged, and I even put here, so I'll put it here, not common. I've never seen it happen. The battery can bulge. Battery can bulge. Battery is filled with electrolyte. I better start writing nicer or Hannah's going to be on me. That's an A right there. I invite any one of you to come up here and try writing with this thing. Who tried it the other day?
No, thank you.
Is
Huh?
it really hard?
Yes, it is really hard. Trying to draw a circuit and
Battery
draw-
is filled with, what's battery filled with?
Electrolyte.
Gatorade. Electrolyte.
You're drinking the wrong water.
It's ironic how in that video they use the Gatorade symbol.
I didn't even notice.
The one I just watched?
Yeah, as I was passing through, there's a Gatorade.
Oh, okay.
There's a Gatorade.
Yeah.
sign.
Good little sense of humor.
did.
Until
you said it, I didn't catch it. That's like old hands, man.
Okay, so what is this electrolyte?
Gatorade came out.
Acid?
30% sulfuric acid. And 70% water. That's by volume.
Distilled water.
All right, distilled water. Why is the distinction matter?
Just tap water has minerals in it.
Okay, it has minerals, impurities. Yeah.
Plan question.
What's that? You have a question?
In the video they said 65% to 35% is
Well, it's very close, but I'm going to go with these numbers because the stuff I get is it's not YouTube-ish. I don't get my information from YouTube.
YouTube
I
certified.
don't know if they made like different.
Well, that is a car battery, and I'm talking aircraft, so I don't know. This is probably came either right out of a textbook, the aviation textbook. Most likely it came out of the textbook. Eisman is the author of that one. Okay, so back to this.
Isn't distilled water not conductive by itself?
Yes, so I've been told.
By itself.
Yes. So, yes. So you don't want to just put water. Now, funny story for you is one of the first places I work, and I was working on a battery. And when you're working on lead acid batteries and you're doing an annual or 100-hour inspection, it's very common. At the least you should do, and this is going back quite a ways, where the least you would do would be to take your battery out of the aircraft and clean the top. What would we clean spilled acid with on top of a battery? Yeah, baking soda. And then the baking soda leaks right down in there, and then what happens? Neutralizes it. So then you don't have any acid. So you never clean the top off with baking soda because it gets in there. So that was a trick question. So you wipe off the top of the battery, clean it all up. You inspect the battery box that it goes in to make, because there's always spillage in there, and we put some baking soda down in there to clean up that, repaint it with acid-proof paint. But back to the battery. So at a minimum, you would take it out, clean off the top, clean corrosions off the connectors, and unscrew all the caps, make sure that the conical weights in there are move free and clear. And then you would put it on a charger and look down in there and make sure that you have the proper level of electrolyte. And if you didn't have the proper level of electrolyte, you would add
Distilled water.
distilled water. So where I worked out in the farmlands, it's well water right next to the river, right on in a contaminated site. From here to the bathroom, less than that, where they had washed engine parts since World War II. So we had this really nasty thing called Turco. Smelled so bad. When you guys do engines, you'll hear me sniffing her. It smells like Turco, and I get all upset. Gotta wash that. It smells really bad. In fact, I would have to pack my fingers with this stuff, and then wear rubber gloves because it just permeates you. And you'd go home and you'd stink, or you'd go to the store and everybody. It's funny. People go, "Smell of burning wire." I'm like, "No, it's just me." "No, I'm serious. The one the ballast is going out." "No, it's just me. It's Turco stuff." "No, I'm pretty sure." I'm like, "No, it'll go away when I walk out. Trust me." And so they would do this nasty stuff, and they would take it out of this tank, and it burns if it got on you like acid. And it's an old carburetor cleaner, and so they take it right outside the door, and then you Stoddard solvent on hook it up to the air compressor, and it would suck it up through the straw, blow it out, aerosol. The guy would sit there and smoke while he did it all the time. And then the well was just right there. And so, you don't drink the water. So anyway, often you get there in the morning, turn it on, it come out brown for a while. One guy, he would just turn it on, let's run around all day. Well, it's only it's going to come out clean. Anyway, so I got to add some water. So I says, well, I can't use that tap water. Do you have any distilled water? We do. And he hands me a little jar. It's this is made for batteries. And you squeeze it and thing comes out. And it says distilled water. Thank you. Sorry. Made it all. I'm a little short. I said, have some more distilled water. Yeah, we got plenty. And he walks over to the faucet and he fills it up, puts a cap on. I said, whoa, dude. He goes, relax. You just got to let it sit a while. It's distilled water. And I'm like, no. Still, and I explained it's like a still, and he was dead serious, and he was dead serious.
Mosquitoes and everything in there.
And he was kind of mad. He was kind of mad when I explained it. He goes, "Well, they told me to just use this stuff," and he was very upset about it. I'm like, "Well, no, you got to go to the store to get the bottle," and so, yeah. I didn't know about this the D part, but it was stilled. You just let it set. So distilled water. Okay. Okay. So if I go, let me see, back. Let me see. This 5, 4, construction, 3. I don't know. Maybe I did. Oh, that's page 6. That goes over there. If I go back far enough in my notes here, maybe it's okay. That was 8 was lead acid batteries. No, I was just going to see if I mentioned before. Okay, so that is really what I talked about there is more of the flooded type battery. I don't know if I made that distinction, but now we have a new style of battery. It's not that new, but it's not that old either, which is really becoming more and more prevalent and more common. And that is the sealed lead acid battery.
And so we were just talking about lead,
The flooded type.
flooding.
I know back before I said there are two basic types. I said there's the flooded and the sealed. They are also known as, especially in our industry, is a valve regulated lead acid battery, or VRLA, valve regulated lead acid battery. It is the same chemical reaction as a flooded battery, I'll say flooded battery. The thing about these, when they first came out, they weren't well loved. They didn't seem to last quite as long, and so people were reluctant to use them. But now they seem to be way more in favor for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is I know Concord is more into this. Gill, the pink, they were really more into the flooded batteries. Now you can see that we have some sealed ones here in the shop that you'll be working with, but those are the first Gill sealed I've ever seen. And they're already, 7 years old?
Mine just turned 6 yesterday.
Yeah, they just turned 6 years old out of a box. And that's why they don't work. Concord, the maroon and gray batteries, there's pink and then maroon and gray. So Concord was more of the first ones to really get good at this. And now I know Concord, they make the battery that I'm going to buy for my aircraft is the Concord, I want to say XCA, but something like that. It's extra cranking amps, so they've actually really upped the amps for cranking in these batteries because my battery's so far from the starter that I need it. But with the flooded battery, you do have this problem that they spew out lead. And your battery box on a lead acid battery has to be vented out. And usually it just vents out of the box, goes out the bottom of the aircraft with a little pipe about that long, and so the acid comes out and then goes right down your paint all the way to the tail. And so it just tears up my 150, well, of course you know what happened there, but it didn't have much paint from the battery box all the way halfway down and it was just polished aluminum in spots. So these new sealed batteries are becoming much more popular, and one that I would prefer to have in my airplane. One, for the cranking amps ability that it now has, and two, for the lack of corrosion. Battery is... that's what you got, wasn't it? Did you get the Concord?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Concord, the sealed one.
Yeah.
I'm curious, why did they come up with a way of collecting it instead of having it run down the length?
They do. I think Piper's the one that's more into this one, is they actually run it into a jar. It's a mason jar, a glass jar, really. It's like, did you just get this from your grandma's house? And so they run one pipe into the jar and then another pipe out. And so it's supposed to drip in there. Now, Cessna didn't do that on any planes that I'm aware of. I don't think Beech did it. I think it was just a Piper thing. Yeah, so, okay, battery, at some point here, battery is sealed. Battery is sealed. Sealed, and gases are stored. And gases are stored within the battery. Within the battery. I should just say save time. At a pressure of, I think it's up to 1.5 psi. So pressure over over 1.5 psi is vented off. So it's not likely, and it's not, the way I understand this and see its purpose, is that the battery should not get over 1.5 psi. So it's going to go up to, say, 1.4, and the battery's going to swell up, and it's going to bulge. It's going to look kind of ugly. There's got to be a little bit of room for this to happen in there. And so they get a little bit bigger, and then they kind of gases as it cools off and kind of does its thing. It reabsorbs, and it's fine. Now, if it goes over that, it's going to have to vent out. But otherwise, it doesn't. And then so the whole purpose is you don't have this venting off where you're losing your electrolytes or the moisture out of the battery where you have to add water back in. So that's one thing. But it's not just a flooded battery that is sealed up. It's more than that. So vented, but is vented, but the amount is usually minimal. Amount is small. All right. So it is common. It is common for valve-regulated lead-acid batteries to bulge. Bulge. I'll put slightly. If it looks like a basketball, it's not good. Okay, things change over time, but as of the writing of my notes here, there are basically two types of VRLA batteries. There's one is the absorbed glass mat. The AGM. And that one has the electrolyte contained within glass mats. So glass, if you ever worked with fiberglass, those are glass mats. So contained within glass mats that act like a sponge to keep the electrolyte next to the plates. So electrolyte is contained within glass mats. Within glass mats. That act to keep, act like a sponge, and keep electrolyte next to the plates. I'll make one more point and we'll have a break. Next two plates. Next two plates, and much less, uses less electrolyte than a flooded battery. What's the matter, Tobias?
Smells skunk.
Yeah, that smells so.
Oh, so
Students.
not last time we were in class, pre-COVID, there was a skunk at the other end of the building, and somebody went out, opened the door, whacked the skunk, and he sprayed. So yeah, we have skunks, right? So be careful when you open the door. So it was horrible.
I think he's back in
Yeah.